There are experiences that change us so deeply, we can never return to who we once were. And what I'm about to share with you, if you truly listen with your heart, may be one of those experiences. Carl Jung, the master of the human soul's shadow, once uncovered a truth so unsettling it left even him in silence. That some acts of betrayal are not accidents, not moments of weakness, but deliberate decisions arising from the deepest, most rejected part of the human psyche, the shadow. Jung wrote, "When the shadow rises and acts with conscious intent, it doesn't just reject you, it erases your humanity entirely within the inner world of the one betraying you. And it is in that very moment that the real danger begins, because they no longer see you as a human being, only as a projection, a target for everything they've disowned within themselves." But Jung also uncovered something else, a quiet yet earth-shattering truth, one that most people never come to realize. And once you do, you'll never see your betrayers the same way again. Carl Jung once warned that contempt is one of the most dangerous states a human mind can enter. It's not just a negative emotion, it's a form of psychological detachment so destructive that the other person is no longer seen as a whole human being, but merely as an object, to be judged, controlled, or discarded. Jung called this the result of a process he described as psychological devaluation. Once this process is complete, the other person no longer exists in one's awareness as a fellow human being, but as a symbol of a mistake that must be punished. And at that point, the shadow begins writing narratives to justify itself. Jung said, "The mind cannot commit harm with intent unless it first constructs a story that makes the harm seem reasonable." Statements such as, "They deserved it," "They're weak," "They're the cause of everything," are not merely psychological self-defense. They are weapons carefully prepared in advance. Jung discovered that this process of justification is neither spontaneous nor accidental. It is deliberately constructed, a system of internalized ideas operating silently within the subconscious, long before any act of harm is carried out. What shook Jung was not overt hostility, but the cold calculation disguised as seemingly harmless gestures, calculated silence, kindness laced with control, concern that always comes with hidden conditions. The shadow, he noted, rarely attacks directly. It smiles, it listens, it pretends to understand you, and then at the precise moment when you lower your guard, it strikes. This is what Jung identified as the manipulation phase. According to him, this represents the most sophisticated form of betrayal, not because of intensity, but because of precision and premeditation. It doesn't just hurt, it studies you, choosing the exact moment to inflict the deepest wound. Jung called this deliberate shadow projection. The manipulator observes, gathers emotional data, memorizes your vulnerabilities, not to empathize but to exploit. It begins with small distortions of reality, an offhand joke, a subtle seed of doubt planted in your mind. And if you fail to notice, fail to resist, the erosion of the self begins, until, as Jung once described, you no longer trust your own intuition. And the most terrifying realization in his observation, this is no accident. This is the shadow operating at its highest form of manipulation through the unconscious consent of the victim. And it is at this exact point that Jung reached one of the most chilling, deeply disturbing discoveries in his entire psychoanalytic legacy. Something you may need to hear more than anything else today. Carl Jung found that when a person acts with true malice, they do not strike randomly. They attack with the precision of a dark nervous system, and their target is not the surface, but what he called your core complexes. These are the deepest psychological structures, where your sense of meaning, personal values, beliefs, and the most sacred parts of your soul reside. The shadow, in its most dangerous form, does not wound you to cause pain. It wounds you to break you. Because it knows this truth well. The more emotionally accurate the attack, the deeper the wound reaches into the soul. Jung observed a chilling truth. Highly destructive attacks often do not come from strangers, but from those who once held your hand. Those who know intimately what you cherish most, what you dream of most, what you fear losing most. And then, using that former intimacy, they turn these very things into your vulnerabilities. Jung called this privileged destruction, when someone uses the closeness, trust, and inner secrets you once shared as a form of ammunition to destroy you from within. You value loyalty, they betray. You honor truthfulness, they lie with unwavering eyes. You preserve your dignity, they slander you with untraceable persuasion. All of this is done systematically, coldly, as if by design. But Jung uncovered an even darker reality. After having caused you pain, they do not stop. They enter a second phase, which he called reality distortion. They do not merely alter the story, they alter your memory of the story. And from there, they achieve what Jung termed a double victory. They cause pain. They make you feel guilty for feeling that pain. This is not just manipulation, this is psychological warfare. A form of deconstructive gaslighting, making you doubt not only your emotions but also your own capacity for reasoning. Jung observed that when the victim begins to ask themselves, "Am I overreacting? Am I imagining things? Am I wrong to feel hurt?" the shadow has successfully implanted its programming code. Guilt becomes a subtle chain. You begin to apologize for your emotions, you start withdrawing your rightful anger, you begin to fear speaking up for fear of being the troublemaker. And as Carl Jung pointed out, confusion is not a side effect, it is the objective. Because when you are confused, you no longer trust yourself. And when you no longer trust yourself, the manipulator no longer needs to control you. You end up controlling yourself, in their place. But it is here that Jung arrived at one of the most profound awakenings. Why toxic people always come back. Jung observed that the true enemy does not seek to hurt you just once. They want to keep you in a state of being hurt. Not physical wounds, but a silent fracture within the structure of your soul. Because, according to Jung, your recovery is a silent yet total denial, an affirmation that what they did no longer holds power. Healing, in the eyes of the shadow, is a silent rebellion against control, and what chilled Jung the most was the moment they return. Not with swords or weapons, but with a smile. Not to apologize, but to reopen wounds under the guise of reconciliation. Jung warned that, when the shadow returns disguised as concern, it is not an attempt to heal. It is a psychological strategy designed to touch the most vulnerable points inside you and reclaim control. But at this very turning point, Carl Jung offered a different path, a conscious response. Not fearful silence, not an explosive anger, but a deliberate choice arising from inner clarity and a foundation of truth. Jung wrote, "You do not need to respond to win. You only need to not lose yourself. When you choose to answer instead of react, choose truth over drama. Choose to walk away with integrity rather than stay to be acknowledged. You not only break the cycle of manipulation, you also refuse to become what once destroyed you." Jung said, "Truth does not need to be loud to create resonance. It only needs to be spoken, once with calmness. For it is calmness, not shouting, that is the proof of inner freedom. Calmness disrupts darkness because it cannot manipulate someone who has seen their true nature clearly." And here is Carl Jung's most profound insight. No betrayal is strong enough to determine the value of your being. No resentment can touch the deep dignity within your soul. They may cause wounds, but you decide what those wounds will become: a lasting rage or a torch for the journey of awakening. As Jung once said, true freedom does not come from defeating others, but from no longer being controlled by others' minds. And in the moment you choose to stand up without responding, choose to speak the truth not to win, but to move forward, choose to heal in silence, you create a kind of victory that needs no audience. A victory that manipulators never realize they have lost. And perhaps it is precisely in that silence, where you no longer need to be understood or defended, that you begin to touch what Jung calls the ultimate freedom of the spirit. No longer held captive by pain, no longer a character in someone else's story. You become the author of yourself. Thank you for accompanying me on this profound journey of exploration. If today's reflections have touched something within you, allow it to spread by sharing this video with those souls who are on the path of awakening. And if you wish to continue walking with me on the path of knowledge, freedom, and healing, please subscribe to the channel, where questions are never simple, but always lead back to truth. See you in the next video, where we continue to expand the light from within.